Hey, Steve Mignani here with some really good junkyard news. If you're going to be anywhere near Sherman, Texas on March 24th and 25th, know that there's going to be an outdoor auction put on by duncansauctions.com of over 200 solid Texas parts vehicles. It's going to be Fords, GM, Mopar, lots of tractors, and even forklifts. These things all have to go. It's an online auction, but also an on-site auction. If you happen to be in Sherman, Texas, you can go and bid in person, or again, online, but all 200 vehicles have to go. Don't let them get crushed. To learn more about this auction, which happens on March 24th and 25th of 2023, check it out on duncansauctions.com. And keep in mind, if you're seeing this after March 24th or 25th, 2003, the auction's over with. But before then, make sure you check it out and save some of these cars. Don't let them go to the crusher. Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the Junkyard Crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts, with something kind of interesting, a 1965 Ford Country Squire station wagon. And 1965 was the year that the Mustang broke, 64 and a half through 65. 560,000 Mustangs sold. They like to say that hotcakes are selling like Mustangs. They were that popular. Well, check this out. Ford full-size cars sold 979,000 units, almost twice as many as did the Mustang. Even though the Mustang was the big deal, full-size Fords like this did the heavy lifting in Ford showrooms in 1965. Now, this one is a Country Squire, one of 30,502 built. And the thing that tells us it's Country Squire is the fake wood on the sides. More on that in a second. Now, of course, 1952 was the first year for the Country Squire name. Sort of picked up where the semi-structural woodies of 1951 on back left off. But again, 1952 onward, Country Squire was a nice big family wagon as American families were growing, but the wood on the sides was totally fake. We'll get to that in a second. Now, 1965 was a big year for full-size Fords. First year for stacked headlights, kind of a nod to Pontiac. And of course the perimeter frame, and in fact, speaking of perimeter frames, this is the AMT Jolly Green Gasser model kit, which is kind of a take on the 65 Ford Galaxy model right here. But the beauty of model kits is that we can kind of learn a little bit from them. And right here, here's the car kind of busted up, but we can see right here, new for 65, that perimeter frame right here. In 1964, the frame was more of a Coke bottle, but more importantly, coil spring rear suspension on that Ford 9-inch in 65. 64, leaf springs. In fact, leaf springs on all Fords back to the Model T, but 65 was the big year. Perimeter frames and coil spring rear suspension. And we find that on this massive Country Squire 10-passenger wagon. Now, under the hood, okay, whatever this had is gone. We'll learn more about that. But this basically, we can see the dual exhaust right there and the H-pipe. The remnants of it, that's not headers, that's factory stuff. So that tells us this one had the 352 4-barrel, which was $179 more than the base 289 small block 2-barrel. And here's the automatic right down here, the Cruise-O-Matic, $189 over the 3-speed on the column. So again, even though the engine's not here, we can still learn from the engine bay. No air conditioning on this one, it was just a heater car. We don't see the big box right there. And of course, power steering, remnants right there. And almost certainly power brakes on this one. Now here is Motor Trend magazine right here, October 1964, and we all know the drill. But inside we see here's the story of the 65 Country Squire. Now we see right here the wood side on that, of course, and it says facing rear seats in wagon have notches for opposite passenger legs. Seats fold flat, spare rest behind right one, built-in spoiler at the rear window deflects exhaust fumes. Look at that picture. Well, more on that in a second. But at the top left, we can see here at the Ford Galaxy, Ford's wagons incorporate a wind deflector at the rear pillars, which directs the airflow to keep the rear window clean of dirt and dust. Fuel tanks have been relocated to the left rear quarter panel with the spare in the right, leaving room for more passengers. And again, this is a 10-passenger station wagon. Hard to imagine 10 people cramming into this thing. Well, it's true. We're going to prove that in just a second. As we make our way around, we can see here, standard brakes, man, 11-inch drums, front and rear, that's all you got. Disc brakes did arrive in 67, Of course, Mustang could have a disc brake in 65, but big Fords like this one, strictly 11-inch drums, like we see here, front and rear. Here's that 352 emblem right there. And again, that 352 was, what, 179 bucks thereabouts, over the 289 two-barrel. Now, we're getting back to the wood trim on this. We can see that they called it Dynoc. Basically, it was adhesive-backed vinyl, automotive grade. I mean, it would last for many years before it would delaminate or fade. But you can see the remnants of the Dynoc here in this region. And the wood, which really is fiberglass, this stuff right here, you can see right there, that's actually a fiberglass structure. It's not wood at all, but again, it looks the part. And the crazy part is that Ford even went to the trouble of having little chrome buttons to cover off where these things are fixed. Underneath that chrome button, a little Phillips head screw with a retainer built in right there. So again, that was the way that Ford differentiated the country Squire from lesser country sedans and ranch wagons. Inside, we see the bench seat interior, and this one could have been had with buckets, believe it or not. Even a 4-speed, crazy but true. But this one has, again, the Cruise-O-Matic. You can see right here the quadrant has a little green dot on 2. I guess that's what you would put the transmission selector in if you were pulling a trailer for maximum performance. But again, a 3-speed automatic, not the C6. This is a cast iron tranny made by Borg-Warner for Ford. So don't confuse this one with the C6, which was the mighty all-aluminum transmission, which came along in '66. But this is kind of cool right here. Ford police cars, the 1965 America's #1 police car. There's the boast on that one. We see the full size. We see the little Fairlanes, and of course the Econoline van even right there. But inside of this, there's a whole page devoted to the wagons. Of course, here's the sedans, the 300 series. And as we move along, the Police Sentinel, which was the cheap little engine car, not the Interceptor. But again, here are the wagons. 15 Ford police wagons offer total versatility. And again, the police wagons were never country Squires because most municipalities would not have paid extra money for the glitz of the country Squire. But you could also get special wagon conversions. We can see right here the added wheelbase done by the Siebert Associates of White House, Ohio. That's the Aristocrat ambulance. Also a coroner's van right there, which was done by Automotive Conversions of Birmingham, Michigan. And again, longer wheelbase on that. That's stuff that was done out of shop, not by Ford. And again, here's the Fairlane, but a nice little pullout right here on how Ford marketed their vehicles to municipalities, police departments, and even industrial users. Now, getting back to the 10-passenger nature of this one, we look at the VIN, and we can see right here the first spots. 5 is 1965. E is Mahwah, New Jersey. 78 is the 10-passenger body. 76 would be a 6-passenger car. But more importantly, look at this, the rear axle, that A. When you ever see, here's a Junkyard pro tip, when you see a letter in the axle spot, that's a limited slip differential. Numbers are open differentials. A tells us this car was born with a 3-to-1 limited slip Ford 9-inch, which is gone. We can see right there, somebody snatched it. So again, this would have had a nice 31 spline or maybe a 28 spline, 3-to-1 limited slip differential, which again, somebody found it and snatched it out of there. But getting back to the 10-passenger nature of this thing, it's kind of interesting to see that we have 1, 2, 3 up front, 1, 2, 3 in the back. And then as we go to the far end of this thing, those 2 little jump seats that we saw a picture of in Motor Trend, there they are in the flesh or in the vinyl. Now, I got to say, you have to be pretty small to get 4 people back there. Again, 3, 3, and 4 is 10. And believe it or not, that is how it was done. Now, on the far side, the spare tire went inside that fender wall. And on the driver's side here, the gas tank lives vertically inside this corner. And here is the flap for the filler. Again, gas tank right inside of here. Here's the filler for it right there. Now, something that's kind of interesting, 1965 was the big year that Ford released the paper on the single overhead cam, the camera engine right here. And the beauty of this engine right here, of course, is meant to take on the 426 Hemi in NASCAR drag racing, or actually roundy-around stock car racing, and also on the drag strip. This engine right here, one of the most potent Ford V8s of all time, 612 horsepower with a single 4-barrel carburetor, and here's basically a white sheet. And that right there, the gray stuff, is stuff added to the 427 wedge to make it into a 426 Mopar Hemi killer. Now this, of course, is an SAE white paper, which basically tells all of the inside story, the dead ends, the things that were modified. The original series of combustion chamber was a twisted Hemi. The one they ended up with was a regular Hemi, kind of like a Mopar, except difference is the spark plugs are not in the middle on the Ford, it's here off to the side. But the big thing about the Ford Camry was the fact there's no push rods, no rocker arms. Instead, the camshaft is located above the cylinder head and the roller rockers actuate directly. That got rid of the massive lifters and push rods and allowed these things to go to 7,000 RPM. Now the thing of it is, Motor Trend did do a little feature on a 427 powered Galaxy. Did they ever build them for you and me? Well, no. But getting back to Motor Trend, our good friends, we can see right here in this very same issue on the next page here, look at this. That is Ford's experimental V8. Now, if you look at that one, that's an early production model with the spark plugs down low. Kind of weird, right? But on the right-hand side, that four-door is a test car. And it says here, the author drove the overhead cam Galaxy for only a few minutes, yet was able to get good impression of experimental V8 smoothness and power. So Ford built mule cars. That little fifth wheel on the back was there to gather data for analog taper sheets that basically showed wheel speed, engine speed, etc. But up on the top here it says, if it's enough to make a strong race driver cry, not for sale. The most beautiful package a guy with a wrench ever laid eyes on. Over 500 horsepower, a single overhead cam for each bank, and so much torque it's mentioned only in whispers. It's the new Ford 427 cubic inch Camry. So again, there it is. Motor Trend was often there. They had such good connections in Detroit that they actually had access to mules and prototypes like this, stuff that you and I could never have. But again, the punchline is the Ford 427 Camry never made production and never wound up in a wagon like this. Would have been cool, but it didn't happen. So that's the story of the Ford Country Squire, one of the most popular suburban transportation machines of all time in the 1950s and 60s and into the 70s even. And here's a 1965 unit right here. Now this one here hit something hard. You can see the nose is pushed up, the perimeter frame got bent, and this car's driving and hauling days are over. But imagine that 10 people riding this thing off to the soccer game or wherever the people might have been taking this thing, as American families embraced these things in the immediate post-World War II era into the 1960s with the baby boom. This was the family hauler par excellence. Well, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel and tell your friends, hit the like button and ring the bell so you know when the next video hits, which is tomorrow morning.